I was studying with Kyle Roberts, studying Ayurveda just through Skype for like 3 years, and we became really close friends. And he mentioned that you and him were going to do a retreat in Utah, and he asked if I wanted to assist. And at that point, I had never met him in person, so I showed up with you actually first, and then we met Kyle in the flesh in that beautiful house out in Woodland. Right? Is that the name of the city?
Mm-hmm.
And then, the rest is history. And then you did craniosacral on me, and that was like a life-changing moment for me. I got elevation sickness for the first time in Utah. We cooked tons of food. I took amazing photos. The retreat was awesome. Finally got to meet Kyle in person. And then we've just become friends ever since and worked together in really different ways. So you took me through the spiral, but now it seems like your business is shifting a little bit more into womb space, and specifically with like birth trauma and healing. But I'd love to hear it in your own words.
Yeah, for sure. So I remember I was meeting with Kyle. We're planning this retreat, and he's like, "Hey, I have a student, and she's really amazing at cooking, and she's this photographer. And what if she came for free and helped us?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." And then future conversations, he dropped in that he'd never met you. And I was like, "Wait, what?" Like, you guys have never met? Because this was 5 years ago, when that type of relationship wasn't as normal as it is now, where our teachers are across the world and in different spaces. And then I got to meet you first because I picked you up from the airport because I live in Utah and Kyle wasn't here yet. And then, you just did such a beautiful job helping with the food and the photos, and your presence was just great for this meditation retreat we did. And then you and I, we just stayed in touch. I was watching your Instagram stuff with your recovery and addiction pieces and just loving what you were doing as I was becoming a spiral practitioner. And I just thought, oh, she needs to be in this work. It would just really resonate with you. So I reached out to you, and it did. So the spiral, I still am a spiral practitioner. I still take people through the spiral, which is an 8-week process that clears conditioning out of the chakras. So we move up, starting at base chakra and going up to the crown, and just really look at our deep childhood stories and conditioning and trauma, and move through 22 different emotions related to the chakras. So I got involved in that work. And then at the same time, I was training to be a family constellation facilitator, which in and of itself is this whole other thing and modality. And so I was learning both simultaneously, and started also mentoring with Zephyria Bell, who is a womb spiral practitioner. And when I met her, I just said, "Hey, I need to mentor with you." I met her at my spiral practitioner training, and she basically was like, "Well, yeah, I have a mentorship program. It's not super formal. Let's just see what we can do." And she ended up creating an official mentorship program so that a couple of us could go through and also become womb spiral practitioners. So that's where we start to look at the trauma and the stories held in the womb space, and how that can hold us back in different areas and conditioning as well. And the two combined with family constellation work, which is ancestral healing, and how ancestral patterns might be showing up in our life consciously or unconsciously, and the womb work together, just started to blend and make this beautiful, I don't know what it is. Like, it's almost a thing. It birthed its own thing.
I didn't know that until just talking right now.
Yeah. So I am taking people through womb spiral, similar like how I took you through spiral. But I bring in a really big piece around ancestral healing and essentially birth, because really that's what we're here to do. We're here to create. And birth doesn't have to be a baby. I've never had a child, but really helping women bring in conscious business plans or conscious children, like not just birthing to birth, not just creating to create. It's like consciously creating what our soul is asking us to birth and bring forward onto this planet.
In what way do you feel like this birthed out of you? Like in your own reflection, almost giving yourself a womb spiral?
Yeah, it's been such an interesting journey the last year because um, I've only been a spiral practitioner for a year and a half at this point. And I think what that really did for me was get all of my conditioning and my stories out of the way. Really indoctrinated with religion as a child. And I live in a very religious community and society where I live. And I feel like once those stories and the childhood stories, and we all have childhood trauma. And that's the thing with trauma is that people are like, oh, I didn't have that bad of experiences, but it doesn't matter. Like whatever each person experienced for their lifetime can be traumatic for them. So it's like getting rid of my childhood traumas around my parents getting divorced and basically essentially raising myself after that, moving through all that, getting all that out of the way. That's when I was like, oh, I'm a craniosacral therapist, but really I'm supposed to mentor with women. Like that's what dropped in after my spiral is like, oh, actually my purpose and my soul work here on this planet is women. And then I started mentoring with Zephyria and I started getting in touch with my womb space and healing the conditioning and the trauma there. And I was like, wow, it's not just women. It's like, it's really creating in birth and like birth trauma, pregnancies that don't go as planned, bringing in conscious souls to the planet. And and so it's like that's the womb piece, but with my craniosacral training, which is very somatic, like how the body feels. I've studied meditation and trauma for 10 years. So pulling in actually how the trauma is stored in the body also on a somatic level. And then the ancestral piece, like what do we carry somatically actually with our ancestors? What do we carry subconsciously with our ancestors? So pulling in each of those pieces, I'm moving through the womb spiral, but that's the individual piece that I bring. Is
Mm-hmm.
that as we clear trauma from the womb space, how much of it is ancestral? How much of it is stored in a cellular level? And what happens when that can be moved out of the way or integrated differently? So, second chakra is all about creation. That's what it is, creating. It's the watery, it's the water as far as the element. And so some people might say, excuse me, that it's a little bit more feminine because water has a feminine element to it. So when our second chakra is blocked or holding a lot of emotion, and spiral work looks at grief here because of the water. They also look at paralyzed will, which is like extreme overwhelm from a traumatic state, which is basically frozen water. So when we're blocked here, and we can be blocked here for a lot of different reasons. We can be blocked here physically, which can be like tight ligaments and tight hips and tight psoas. As women, we can have issues with our cycle and our period and have tight ligaments because of endometriosis or a lot of sitting can cause some physical stuff. We can become blocked here energetically. Like if we as women sit here and like talk about, if you say things like, I hate my cycle, I hate my period, or there's a big disconnect between the feminine essence and the second chakra, that can create an energetic blockage. So anytime there's blockage within the second chakra, it really stifles our ability to create. And as women, I'm going to just mostly talk about it for women. It's like the womb is where we create from. Like that's where all the stuff is for us to have babies on a physical level. But it's also where our energy is for us to have creation and for us to create whatever it is we want in the world. So if there's a lot of blockages, whether it's a belief like, oh, I can't create, or I'm not creative enough, or seriously, if there's like a history of sexual assault or rape and the woman shuts down there, that stifles the ability to open up and be receptive and create, because feminine energy feminine energy is very like juicy. Like if you think about what creation is, like we have creation by running our sexual energy and our feminine juice. And like, if there's conditioning, like sex is bad or don't dress too provocatively, like that's a big one that's changing in society right now. I feel like don't be too sensual. Don't do these things. Then we shut down here. And then our whole ability to create something becomes stifled because that energy is just, it's like stagnant. It becomes blocked. And then, you can see it in women. We can start to watch how people walk. That's a really good indicator about what's going on in their system. And it's like, are people walking with their pelvis more of like a posterior pelvic tilt, which basically pushes the pubic bone forward? Mm-hmm. So there's people that walk with like they're totally open, but that can be too open. That can just be like, I'm here to give you all my juice. I'm going to give it away. And it can drain people really quickly too. That type of person can get drained really easily because they're constantly just giving it all away. Mm-hmm. Versus people that go into an anterior pelvic tilt or tuck it back, they're shutting down. And it's just like, oh, I'm hiding. I'm not going to give it away. I'm actually going to protect myself. So it's coming into this place of balance of like, where am I in alignment? Where am I in the middle where I'm creating for me? And because I'm creating, people are getting the benefits of it versus like giving it away or shutting it down. Mm. Yeah, it's huge. And like, I would say in my womb work and in spiral work, but if a woman, this is one correlation I see a lot. If a woman is not in touch with her sensuality and sexuality, she's definitely going to have blocks with creating her business, really. It's like our business blooms and our business is like blossom and come into fruition when we're in fruition and we're blossoming and we're open. And you don't have to have a partner to be that way. It's like, this is all about ourselves and our relationship with our body and our sex. Like, how do you view the world sexually? And then look at how you view your business. And there's going to be correlations.
Wow. There's a book to write.
Right?
Like, what's the first step to get in touch with your womb space? Especially if you're probably not embodied, if you do have issues with your body, or if you have had sexual trauma.
Yeah. So especially with the history of trauma, just always make sure that you're in a safe space. So whatever you need to do to create safety for you, whether that's like, you do it in the bathtub because you feel comfortable in the bath, or you do it with the lights on because that's what, or you do it with lots of blankets and candles because that's what helps you feel safe. And I see a lot of people, and I'm mostly speaking in terms of trauma, but they'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to heal it. And I'm going to heal it in one session. And then they jump in the water and they basically re-trigger themselves. And I actually see a lot of practitioners do that with clients too. And one of the bases for trauma that I like to talk about is trauma usually happens because it's too fast, it's too much, or it's too soon, or it's not enough in cases of neglect. So if you go to relook at the trauma or heal the trauma, and you go right back to that too fast, too much, too soon, you're just going to reactivate the trauma itself in the body. So I like to tell people, like, put a toe in the water. Put a toe in and just see how the toe feels. And then you put a couple more toes. And maybe that's it for that day. Because really what you want to pay attention to is, am I getting reactivated? And people that are not in tune with their bodies are going to have a really hard time knowing if they're getting reactivated. Mm-hmm. So working with a practitioner that specializes in those things. But for people that know that, okay, I can create a safe space to myself. I know that I'm safe, but I want to get more in touch with my body and specifically my womb space. I love the activity of just warming up the hands until the hands are really warm. And it doesn't have to be womb. This could be anywhere in the body. And once the hands are warm, place them on on your womb space. And I like, I kind of go here, and the womb is pretty low. It's the pubic bone is that hard bone that sits in the front. Like my fingertips are touching pubic bone.
Mm-hmm.
And then close your eyes. I won't hear. Just close your eyes and start to tune inward and bring awareness to what's underneath your hands.
Mm-hmm.
And just start to feel and be curious. Like, what is under my hands? What is under there? What am I noticing in this moment? And that's why I'm a big meditator. And I encourage a lot of my clients to meditate, because it teaches us how to come to this present moment, which is how we tune in with our body. Our body isn't in the past, and our body isn't in the future. Like, our body is right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's how our body wants to be, really. So, yeah, just tune in. What's there? Be curious. What is there anything it has to tell me? That's a question I love to ask my body. Like, I literally will talk to my body and parts of my body as if they're like, I'm talking to you.
Yeah. You told me too. Yeah. You told me during one of our sessions or maybe it was one of your posts, but like a lot of the inner child stuff has really helped me. I think just from reading your posts, honestly, on Facebook and Instagram, it's like when I start to have a fit or get an attitude, even if it's just in my mind, like I do what you said. I actually like sit with it and talk to that, nurture it, maybe take a nap, like a child would. And then guess what? I wake up feeling so much better. Like it really is simple if you are present and aware of what's going on and you want to take the time to do that work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, man, this stuff does not happen overnight.
No.
It's like, if we're going to parent our own inner child and heal our own inner child, I mean, I'm 40 almost. It's like I have 40 years. I have 13 years to heal. It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I love inner child work. And I do tell people all the time, I'm like, oh, you want to have a temper tantrum? Why are you stopping yourself?
Yeah.
Literally go stomp your feet in the corner and get that energy out of your body, because it wants to come out, but you're stopping it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, go do it. Go have a temper tantrum. My neighbors probably think I'm so crazy because I have a medicine ball, and I'll do medicine ball slams to move anger. And one night, this was a long time ago, like a year ago, I was moving through a lot of rage. So I was out we have a cement porch, and I just was out there like totally medicine slamming and like grunting and like fully in it and moving that rage. And I could hear the neighbor open his door and kind of come out on his deck. And then I heard him just like quietly try to go back inside. I was like, yeah, that's a woman in her rage.
Yeah. This is so funny. I went back to a memory the first morning in your house. Again, we're basically strangers. Like we made like this massive batch of kitchery that night. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Went to like all these Whole Foods, but I was quietly like elevation sickness. So I was trying to keep everything together. But I remember the next morning, I think you invited me to come to your yoga class or Heather's class where you used to teach. But I remember walking up the stairs trying to find coffee, and you're out on your backyard with your like stick.
Yeah.
And this woman is like, I just watched you. Like I did what your neighbor did. I like creeped back downstairs because I was like, I was so enamored by you, but also like terrified. And I was like, how do I be like Lesha when I grow up?
Yeah, my Polari stick.
Yeah, but it was awesome. And then finally when we like connected, you're like, oh yeah, I went for like a 5-mile hike with my dog, and then I got coffee, and then I did this in the backyard. And I was like, oh my God, where am I and who is this woman?
Yeah.
So you're awesome, basically, is what I'm saying. Yes. So then what about if we're talking about birthing your dream or your business? Do you find the paths to be pretty similar? So your ideal clients are women consciously conceiving and also women birthing their ideas, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, because they are consciously conceiving. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like if we're moving through this world doing our soul work, like the thing that our soul really wants to do, we're just in better alignment, and we're creating from a place of like love and gratitude and like this higher vibration, versus if we're just doing a job to make money or something that we're not fully aligned with, that we don't fully love, it just doesn't have that same essence or that same vibration. And so it's like, whether you're creating a physical being or like I call it a business baby.
Yeah.
Because our businesses are our babies.
Yes.
Really. Yeah, like think about the time and the effort and the energy, and they are actually little pieces of us that we put into the world, and that we're actually saying like, hey, I do this thing, this is my business, and this is how I can help you. And if there's not alignment there, or if it's like we're just spitting it out quick and sloppy, we don't really believe what we're selling, it's like the energy of it is completely different.
Yeah.
And it's just harder to move. Like when you hate your job, it's so much harder to like show up and be motivated and do it with heart, like heart space. So I think that's how this connection, it's like, I call them business babies. They're business babies, and they have their little minds of their own.
It seems like it, right?
They're like their own little entities, whether we like it or not.
Literally, also. Yeah.
So it's like, how can we birth conscious business entities? And like, look at the big companies, right? The ones that are actually conscious about how they're putting their work out in the world, that are like trying to be green about their work and not using child labor, taking care of the environment. It's like, those are the businesses I'm aligned with, and I'm willing to buy from them and spend more money because of what they bring and what they stand for. So it's like, how can we do that as individual people?
Mm-hmm. And then how have you seen yourself and your business grow and change, even through what you just described? Because even when you're describing it, I'm seeing my life kind of flash in bits and pieces of when I had the job I hated, when I wasn't stepping into my worth because I was blank, blank, blank. How did you see that process actually work for you?
Yeah, it's so funny. So you asked me these questions this week. I have to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story.
Please. I love story time.
So like at the beginning of the year, pre-pandemic, I put on a workshop, and it was about embodying your king.
Okay.
And it was like teaching women. It was a women's sacred space, women's sacred circle, teaching them how to embody their king. And I put that out there, and for like the 2 or 3 weeks before it actually happened, the universe was like, oh, you're going to teach women how to embody their king? Well, here you go. And I got tested from every area about what it meant to hold my king, my archetype of king as a female, which is like holding boundaries and speaking my truth and like showing up in congruence, and like anywhere I could get tested, I got tested. I was like, okay, good lesson. So I read your questions and I said yes to this podcast. And literally like an hour or 2 hours ago, I was crying in my kitchen about my business and like where I'm going and what I believe and what I want and like what's happening with my transition and how our spiritual self and how we move through the world affects our business self and how we move through the world. So I was like, of course, this is the podcast. This is the conversation.
This is a conversation. Yes.
And I am like fully being tested this week about like what that means, and like, yeah, just about what it means. So there's the story. I'm going to have you ask the question again so I make sure I answer it clearly.
Well, it goes into a couple different angles that I definitely wanted to ask a little bit later, but it's really just like your personal story from the not being congruent and not living your purpose to getting to where you are now, even though it's not perfect. Maybe it's never going to be perfect, but you've grown and changed and trusted your path. And I think that there's a lot of people, myself included, we get caught up. We end up crying in the kitchen because things aren't going right. We get tested constantly. And being an entrepreneur and an artist, like, it's not an easy job. You know, it might look awesome on Instagram and sound really cool that I can take a 1 o'clock walk to the coffee shop. You know what I mean? But it's like, they don't see me working from 6 a.m. until midnight. The other in my bed or on the floor crying. Do you know what I mean? And I guess you know me, I love to break stereotypes and taboos, and I'm really sick of like that pretty girl perfect image of the entrepreneur.
Totally.
That's not my life. So I don't know, but I love it. I'm super happy and grateful for where I am, but I'd love to also see that journey from other perspectives. So if you want to give a little insight, like from when you're maybe an occupational therapist to craniosacral to doing your spiral training, but that's just what I see. So
yeah, it's been a journey. Like it's definitely been, because I was an occupational therapist. I became an occupational therapist 13 years ago. And I do think there's a stereotype. And I do think there's there's a lot here. So I do think there's definitely businesses out there of like women that are living their ideal lifestyle and their ideal entrepreneurship, but it didn't happen overnight. And it's not to say that you can't come into your ideal job and your ideal business quickly, but what we're not seeing with these people on Instagram and what we're not seeing is the behind the scenes of like what they actually had to do to get there and their own personal journey that they had to go through to get there. And like they're just showing you the end result, right? And like, yeah, we aren't seeing you in bed at 6 a.m, you know, or like me
super hot with coffee. I woke up with this t-shirt, like, ugh.
I woke up this way. Isn't that like one of those funny hashtags? So yeah, like, and that's actually part of the reason why I was so drawn to your addiction and recovery work, because I was like, this is real. This is actually what it's like, and this is actually what's happening. And so yeah, there's been lots of times I have not been congruent. And there's lots of times when I am congruent and I question it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my personality. So I started out as an occupational therapist and I got into craniosacral because I had a craniosacral therapy session and it really blew my mind. It was the first time I realized how our body can hold emotions and stories and memories. So he did a really big diaphragm release on me and released my diaphragm. And for 2 weeks after, I cried probably every day. And I could not tell. I knew some, like a little bit, I was crying about a previous marriage and failed marriage and divorce. The rest of it, I was like, I have no idea. I just need to cry. And that was the beginning of me being like, wow, we store stuff here. Mm-hmm. We store stuff in our body. So then I started taking craniosacral training and started applying it to my occupational therapy practice. And then when I started working for a children's hospital, that's when I started working with babies. And once a local lactation consultant found out that I worked on babies, she started sending me tons of babies. And I couldn't do both. Like I couldn't have both practices. So I quit my occupational therapy job, went full-time into craniosacral therapy. It was a scary decision because it was like, occupational therapy to me represented the real job.
Okay.
I got paid really well. I had insurance. I had retirement. I had 401k. And that's what I had to walk away from in order to own my own practice. So one question that I asked myself, which this might help some people out there, is like, I was looking at myself in my 10-year plan. And I said to myself, is this where I want to be in 10 years? Like working at a hospital, trying to do both, or just working in a hospital? Is this what I want in 10 years? And immediately my intuition and my gut was like, no, I want to be working for myself in 10 years. Mm-hmm. The answer I heard. So in that space, I was like, well, if I want to be working for myself in 10 years, why am I waiting 10 years? Like, I'm just going to do it now, even though it means like way less income, way less retirement. I'm just going to trust that this is, I'm hearing this answer for a reason. So But where I got out of alignment really quickly is I wanted to make money. I had the pressure to make the money that I had as an occupational therapist. So instead of seeing my ideal clients or turning people away when I should have, I started seeing anyone and everyone. And in that space, I basically was just like not passionate about who I was seeing and who I was working with. And it's really just been recently through going through the spiral and womb spiral, realizing like, okay, women birthing. And I just recently let go of a lot of my bodywork clients.
I read your email.
Yeah.
I was
Thanks.
obsessed with you. Yes.
Thanks, pandemic. So it's like the pandemic actually gave me an opportunity to slow down. And basically, because I was not doing body work, I had my online clients, but that's not a full schedule at this point. And I recently just was like, okay, like I want to be fully aligned and fully passionate about who I'm serving and who I'm working with. So I sent out an email and basically told half my clients not to come back, which sounds harsh. And it was the hardest email I ever wrote, to tell clients like, I love you and I'm going to set this boundary, because what I want to do instead is open myself up for the people that I really want to work with. And right now I have no room in my schedule to work with those people.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
Creating space for that. But because again,
who are your clients prior? These are like new people who have stepped up.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So really, it's again, I was asking that question of like, where do I want to be in 10 years? Where do I want to be? Do I want to be in a bodywork practice where I'm just seeing anyone with back pain or TMJ? And it's like, no, because that's not my gifts. Like, that's not how I can fully serve people.
Mm-hmm.
I can fully serve people looking at their wounds and their ancestral traumas. Like, that's a pretty unique niche that not a lot of people can offer. And if that's what I want to be offering, I just have to trust, like, okay, like this is where I'm going. This is what I'm hearing with my intuition, and just fully trusting that. And then today I was like, what am I doing? I just made the least amount of money I've made in a really long time.
So from the pandemic, you learned, what was the greatest lesson from the pandemic? You said rest, but it's sounding like perhaps it was like this. I mean, that's a massive shift that you chose during a really scary time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It's interesting because, yeah, rest is huge. And it's interesting the parallels that I am going through. So talking about like, how does your personal life affect your business life, right? So a big piece of what I want to offer is conscious conception, whether it's a baby or a business, right? Well, we can't consciously conceive from a place of fatigue and a place of where we're worn out.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't. Our bodies can't maintain the load that we as a society expect our bodies to maintain. Like, we're just living so fast paced, so much information coming in. We're eating really unhealthy foods because our environment's messed up. Like, all these things, our bodies just cannot handle the pace anymore. So with pandemic, I was forced into a place of like, well, now you have to rest. Now you like, I wasn't working very much. I went on a lot of walks. I did a lot of Joe Dispenza meditation.
I was waiting for that.
Every day. I'm on a 90-day Joe Dispenza meditation.
I dropped out of the group. I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do it.
Intense. And he talks a lot about calling in your future self. And what I realized is like, it's just like conception. It's just like birth. Like, if there's a future baby or a future business that you desire, it's really hard to have clarity around that future business and that future birth if your body's worn out and there's not clarity because your mind's going a million miles an hour. Like, when our minds are going a million miles an hour, we can't connect to that thing that we desire. Mm-hmm. with a clear mindset. So when my schedule cleared, it's like my mind cleared, my body rested. And in this place of rest, I was like, oh, I conceived. I had clarity. I was like, okay, I have this business already. It's not exactly what I want it to be.
Mhm.
So what can I do to make it exactly what I want it to be? Because I'm the boss. It's just me.
Right.
I'm an accountant. You help me too. But like, I don't have employees. I can literally do whatever I want with my practice. So that was the takeaway of the pandemic, is just being in a place where we actually slow down. And it's from slowing down that the clarity and the conception comes. And like this ability to be in tune with our second chakra and be creative and create from there, like literally creating from the womb space versus creating from the head and from fear and from demands of society or culture. It's such a different way to create.
Do you see like an average block from your clients?
Well, I feel like my clients are my biggest teachers.
Mm.
So it's like if I
Yeah.
everything yeah. And every moment is an opportunity to look in a mirror. So if a client is coming to you and you're a coach, you do business consulting or whatever you do, it literally is an opportunity to look at your own life and say, where am I doing that? Or if you're triggered by your clients, it's like, why am I being triggered by my clients? This is something I need to look at in order to hold this space better for people and guide them through it. So what's the biggest block I see for my clients? I think a lot of my clients aren't soul aligned in their business.
Mm. Like more up here.
Yeah, or like they think that this is their business. Like they think that what they want to put out in the world is like this idea that they got because they've either been conditioned or it's an idea that came to them or it's something they like. So they just like go with it versus get all the conditioning out of the way, have like a completely clean slate,
Mm-hmm.
and then ask your intuition, like, what should my business be? What is my business? And let your intuition answer. Let your body answer. And I think if a lot of people did that, they would make tweaks to their business. Because I just don't think it's soul aligned. And I do believe that once people start moving through a soul aligned business, like, so with Womb Spiral, I literally wake up almost every day, a couple times a week. I tune into my womb space or second chakra, and I just start to vibrate the energy and the clients that I want to work with. And I literally say to myself, I know you're out there, and when you're ready, I'm here. Like I'm being magnetic and I'm calling you towards me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did one post on Womb Spiral, and I have 6 clients going through Womb Spiral right now.
That's awesome.
People contact me and they're like, I think you're doing this thing called Womb Spiral, right? And I'm like, yeah, what do you want to know? Like, that's how I've gotten my clients, is like changing my energy.
Yes.
Being like, here I am, people. Like, when you're ready, I know you're going to show up, and not going into that fear base.
Mm-hmm.
Not going into the like, oh, I have to advertise and I have to push and I have to get all this stuff done. It's like, no, it's like, that's the soul aligned business. And that's the number one thing I think my clients struggle with. It's like,
Definitely.
they don't know what their soul aligned business is.
In that piece, I feel like that happened to me actually when everything like basically hit the fan with coronavirus. I was getting clients from every angle, and I thought for sure I was just going to like die out. I was like, nobody's going to need my work anymore. Everyone's going to be saving their money. I'm a luxury, da da da. Like I had all of these fears coming in, and then all of a sudden I got super busy, and then I got more busy doing like video editing, which I actually love doing the most, but that's not what I promote at all. Like at all. It was all word of mouth and through like this really cool community of people and my friends. But then earlier, what you and I were talking about was how sometimes that fear comes in, and then you're like, oh God, I'm aligned. But then what? Like what happens next? Or can you speak on that a little bit? Like once you feel like you're getting what you want, but then all of a sudden you're like, this cannot be sustainable. Like we stop ourselves from almost like we're so close to that goal.
Mm. Yeah, it's like those moments where you're like, wow, things are going really well, or I'm so aligned. And then, like you said, we stop ourselves. And it's just this internal sabotage. And the archetype of the saboteur, I think, is something, if people don't know what that means, like, go look it up. Like,
Mhm.
each one of us, so this is Carolyn Mice or Mrs. Work, that we're full, each of us have different archetypes. And an archetype is basically a habit pattern. But her thing is there's four that everyone has, and it's the child, the prostitute, the victim, and the saboteur. So we all fall into the trap of sabotaging ourselves. And those moments usually come when, like, we're in alignment and there's this little voice, like you said, that that's like questions what we're doing and questions. And I think some of that is cultural, because usually when you're in a soul aligned business or doing what your soul says, it looks different than what other people are doing. And then come in like social media, Instagram, we have access to this all the time. We're inundated with whatever everyone else is doing. And I literally have a client going through this right now. She's saying, like, she's trying to figure out her business. She's a coach, and she's literally like, well, this person does it this way, this person does it this way, this person's telling me to do it this way. And I'm like, what way do you want to do it? What way does your intuition tell you to do it? And, like, can you trust that? So I think we start to sabotage ourselves because we're like, oh, I have this business, or this is what I'm offering, and it's really different than everyone else. Or, like, this person's telling me to do it differently, or this person has way more money than I do, or this person failed. Like, they're telling me their failure story. And so then we just start to have that sabotage language, sabotage ourselves, start to not trust ourselves. I think that's the biggest one. It's like, how can we move into a space where we actually just hear our intuition and trust it and do it
Mhm.
without question?
So even to listen to your intuition, you have to be ready for some sort of change or transformation or healing process in your life. And what I'm seeing with my clients and with myself and with my friends is, like, we heal a part of ourselves, get some sort of challenge, and then that inspires a shift or something in your business. And then if you're not ready to heal that part of you, is that part connected to the success or failure of a business venture, do you think? Or have you seen that?
Um, yeah, I want to say yes. My intuition is like, yeah, totally. But I don't know if I can speak, like, I don't know how to language that, right?
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
I do think the correlation is for sure there.
Mhm.
Um, I think, again, so if you think about your business being like a little baby that you birth out in the world, it's a part of you. Like, it is something that comes from you. So if you're not willing to look at certain shadows or certain parts of yourself, this extension of you is also not going to make changes or grow in that way too.
Mm.
Side note, super interesting. I actually spiraled my business.
I thought so. I mean, I can pick up on that just from knowing you and, like, talking. Plus, I went through the spiral too. I mean, I spiraled my business too without even thinking
Meaning to.
about it. And when I would describe what we were doing with the spiral and my work with you and you, because I want all of my people to work with you. I want everyone on the planet to go through the spiral, obviously. Um, they would be like, "Is Lesha your business coach?" Like, because for me, it was healing and, like, deep, like, I had no idea how much grief I was carrying around. For me, that was huge to let go of, and to even just process and look at, like you said, like the shadow, because I didn't think I deserved to grieve all of the loss and the death and whatever. Um, but then once I, like, literally released it, then stuff started coming to me and change. And, like, I mean, raise my consciousness. That's the whole purpose of it, right? Um, but it's just so complicated to describe to, like, in layman's terms. But people thought you were my business coach. Like, that's what translated from my work with you and the spiral, which isn't how I feel in my body, but on paper, like, oh my God, my life is completely changed in 6 months. And I finished the spiral with you 3 months ago, maybe.
Yeah, was it about November?
I think it was early winter. Yeah. So who knows? But
been about 6 months.
Yeah. So I think my question is actually what you're doing also. It's like you're releasing these blocks, or you're holding space for people to look at their shadow side and their blockages, and then cradling them as you're like their mother, and then they have to cradle their birthing experience or their business. It's just really powerful.
It's super fascinating. And so let's use your grief example.
Mm.
So it's like if a lot of your internal subconscious energy is going towards this grief that you haven't been willing to look at or to let go or integrate, just depends on what the person needs. That's a lot of internal energy going towards that. So the second you allow yourself to either release, integrate, process, deal with, look at grief, and move it out of a somatic. So when I say somatic, I just mean body. So you're moving it out of the subconscious, you're moving it out of the tissues, out of the body. And now you have all this extra space that allows you to put it towards something else. So in your case, allowing you to put it towards towards some desires, towards business, towards being creative. I mean, really, if that's what we're here to do, which I think it is to create. I do believe that. It allowed you to then put your energy towards creation and just towards being more soul aligned of like, yeah, we're not here. This is just my own personal belief. Like, yes, life happens. Life is not easy for anyone. And I also think that we're here to like move through it and transcend it. And I had a 12-year-old client yesterday, and at the very end, I said, "Do you have any more questions?" And we were online, and he looks at me and he's like, "What's the point of life?"
Yes.
And I look at him and I go, "Transcendence."
Oh, good job. Good.
And he's like, "I don't know what that means." I was like, "Look it up and hang out. Like, let's talk about it next time you come." Because really, it's like once we transcend or go up the level of consciousness, the scale of consciousness, and this is spiral dynamic theory for the people out there that are rolling their eyes. This is spiral dynamic theory and David Hawkins' power versus force. So it's like there is a scale of consciousness, and we can climb up that scale. And if you're hanging out in the grief space, you can't create. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it's funny. People are like, are you a business coach? Like, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't know.
Okay, so this is a great question. What is your elevator pitch?
Yeah, I've been working on that. So a lot of times it kind of depends who I'm talking to.
Love that. Totally.
Because if it's a business person, I'm going to put it in business sense. If it's like a mom or like a woman, I'm going to talk probably more about conception or pregnancy. So what I was saying is like, I help women who want to conceive or may not have had the ideal birth they wanted, or they're experiencing birth trauma, to move and integrate through their traumas so that they can have more holistic and integrated families. Mm-hmm. Family piece. Mm-hmm. But if it's more of a business, it's like I help, and it's women. Like I have worked with men, and I do have some male clients. But helping women consciously conceive the business that they desire.
Does a part of your heart still like want to help everyone?
Oh yeah, that's actually part of the reason I was crying in the kitchen, is because the writing class I'm in, we had a one-on-one, and she's like, "You need to raise your prices. Why aren't you raising your prices?" And she said, "Is it a scarcity thing? Or are you in like the money scarcity thing?" And I was like, "No." She's an intuitive business reader. And she's like, the word that's coming to me is availability. She's like, you want to be available for everyone. Mm-hmm. Oh, like I do. Like, I want to help everybody. I want to service everyone and give everyone services. And if I raise my prices, then I can't serve everyone. And she's like, well, now you know what you have to journal on this week.
And you're like,
So when I was in the kitchen, that's what I literally was like, man, I do need to raise my prices. I'm willing to work with people, see them for lower prices, but it puts me in a different bracket. And am I willing to own am I willing to be in that bracket?
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's a hard question
Mm-hmm.
because I do want to help everyone. And yeah, I think the weirdest thing is like as I go into womb spiral and I start talking about conception and I start talking about sexuality, like talking to people, like yesterday I was talking to a pregnant woman about doing perineal stretching. And I was like showing her a website about where to get these special wands and like anal things so that she could do stretching and like, and I was like, how is this even coming out of my mouth right now? Like those are the moments where I'm like, who's talking right now?
It's awesome.
I'm like, 10 years ago, I never would have said vagina. Ever. Now I'm like, do this with your vagina and touch your lips.
And having yoni steams, group yoni steams.
Totally. I did get a text from someone that said, who are you? Like, but in a funny way, like a friend of mine, because I had advertised like group yoni steam.
Yeah.
He was like, what the fuck is happening? Who are you? Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have done a group yoni steam a couple years ago with a group of women. But now I'm like, let's do more.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's the healing journey though, right? And the acceptance and the just tuning into, again, the womb space. Like, what do you really want and what can you share with a certain group of people?
Yeah, and get the conditioning out of the way.
Yeah.
And then your soul aligned business can be like, actually, I'm here to help people birth something. Mm-hmm. Now that I can like talk about these things, now I can help people birth. So, yeah.
Boom.
That's my business. I'm in the business of birth.
You are.